My cousin does nothing but mooch. All he wants to do is take my money, ask me for favors. Well, it's come to a boiling point, and I'm at the area where I can't take it anymore. So I decide to tell my no-good-for-nothing cousin this. What's up, guys? So I'm kind of in a pickle here. To give some context, I'm a 29-year-old dude, got a decent job and a relatively peaceful life, except for one massive recurring migraine, my cousin Brock. Growing up, Brock and I were tight. Our families lived in the same neighborhood, and we'd spend almost every summer together, playing ball, having sleepovers, and causing a fair amount of troubles. As kids, we always had each other's backs, but as with most things, time changes people. We went to different schools, made different friends, and kind of just drifted apart. But for the past few years, Brock's been a pretty regular fixture in my life, and not exactly in a fun way. It started off innocently enough. He would call me out of the blue, maybe once or twice a year, and I'd be like, "Hey Brock, long time no see, how's it going?" And every single time, he'd have a new sob story. Last, it was his job, broke up with his girlfriend, had some sort of accident, you name it, it happened to Brock. At first, I felt really bad for the guy. I mean, we used to be like brothers, right? So I'd lend him some cash or let him crash at my place for a bit. It wasn't too often, and I figured family helps family, but as time went on, the calls became more frequent, and suddenly it was every month, then every week, and the amount that he'd asked for just kept increasing. At one point, I remember jokingly asking him if he was trying to fund a rocket to the moon, and it wasn't just money. Sometimes he'd showed up at my apartment with his latest girlfriend, asking if they could crash for the weekend, just until Monday. He'd say, then Monday would just come and go, and he'd have another excuse to extend his stay. At one point, they were at my place for a whole month, and I swear they ate every snack I had. I'd come home from work ready to dig into snacks I bought for myself, and they'd be gone. I mean, who does that? Despite all of this, I tried to be understanding. Brock had a tough life, and he wasn't as fortunate as me in many ways, so I thought maybe he genuinely needed help. But then, I started noticing a pattern. Patterns that made me think, am I just walking ATM to this dude? I remember the first red flag. A mutual friend of mine mentioned seeing Brock at this fancy club downtown popping bottles like it was nobody's business. This was just a week after Brock told me he was broke and he simply could not even afford groceries. When I asked him about it, he just laughed it off and said it was on his friend's tab. And they invited him out, but how many friends are going to drop big money like that on you every other weekend? Well, and then there were the stories. Brock had a new one every time we spoke, and they started sounding rehearsed. I began questioning if they were even real or just a ploy to get me to open my wallet. All these doubts made me feel guilty. Brock was my family, after all, and every time I thought about cutting him off or confronting him, I'd be reminded of our shared childhood, our good times, and I would just think, am I being paranoid? Maybe he really is just down on his luck. But recent events have made me reconsider everything, so am I being used? Am I right to feel angry and betrayed? Would love to hear you guys and what you think. I'll give more context in the next post. Update number 1. Alright guys, it's been a couple of weeks, and man have things escalated. I really thought the Brock situation could not get any crazier, but boy was I wrong. So last week I get a call late at night, and surprise, surprise, it was Brock. Only this time he wasn't asking for money for groceries or rent. Instead, he was calling me from jail. Yep, you read that right. Jail. I could not even process it at first, like how in the world did he land himself behind bars? Apparently he got caught up in some bar brawl downtown, and there were some pretty hefty charges against him. Brock was always hot-headed, but this was a whole new level of reckless. And of course, he did not have money for bail. That's where he hoped good old cousin OP would come in. Now, I won't lie to you guys. My first instinct was to let him sit there for a bit. Maybe it'd be a wake-up call, teach him some responsibility, but then the guilt crept in. The whole he's family sentiment, but I could not shake off the feeling of being taken for granted either. I finally decided to answer his pleas, but with strict conditions. I told Brock over the phone, "Look, man, I don't have a lot of money just lying around, especially not for bail, but I'll do you this. Under one condition, you have to promise me you'll get a job and pay me back as soon as you can, and I mean it, Brock. This is the last time I'm forking out money for you." There was silence on the other end for what felt like an eternity. I half expected him to start yelling or guilt-tripping me, but to my surprise, he just quietly agreed. He sounded desperate, genuinely desperate. It was that the gravity of his situation had finally hit him. I promise, man. I'll get a job, I'll pay you back. I don't want to be this person anymore." Feeling both relieved and apprehensive, I dipped into my savings. Yeah, the very savings I was putting away for a potential house down payment, and bailed Brock out. When he got out, he looked different, drained. He hugged me tightly, thanking me over and over again, and for a moment it felt like we were kids again, just two cousins who had hit each other's back. But reality snapped back quickly. I reminded him of his promise, and he nodded, claiming he had already had a couple of job interviews lined up. Well, I wanted to believe him, I genuinely did, but the skepticism was hard to shake off. Was this just another one of his tall tales? Or had he genuinely hit rock bottom and was ready to climb back up? Days turned into weeks, and while Brock seemed to be trying, something just did not sit right with me. The doubt, the mistrust, it had grown roots, and I could not ignore it anymore. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would race, half expecting it to be another call for help from Brock, hoping things get better from here, but I have some doubt in the back of my head. Update number 2. Okay, so it's been another couple of weeks and things have been hectic, to put it lightly. I thought I was helping Brock by letting him crash at my place for a few days, but it seems like old habits die hard. Immediately after getting out of jail, Brock came to me with that familiar look in his eyes. Part desperation, part guilt, and a hint of manipulation. He said he had no place to go and was genuinely trying to turn his things around. He promised it would just be a few days until he could get a job and start putting some money together. Now, I'll admit, I was hesitant. I mean, after everything that's happened, who wouldn't be? But the optimist in me said the guy who remembers our childhood bond wanted to believe that this was the turning point, so I agreed, setting a strict timeline. In just a few days, that's all he had. But in those few days, it became painfully obvious that Brock was back to his old ways. Well, each evening when I'd return home from a tiring day of work, I'd find him sprawled out on the couch, empty takeout containers strewn around him, binge-watching some show like he hadn't had a care in the world. I swear the first time I saw that, I thought I was going to lose it. There he was, living rent-free, using money he didn't have on takeout food, and doing absolutely nothing to find a job. Was this the same guy who promised to change? Who promised to pay me back? The frustration built up with each passing day. But the last straw was when I found out that he'd ordered food using my credit card. When I confronted him, he said that, well, I wouldn't mind, and that's when I decided I had to put my foot down. I sat Brock down and told him he had a move-out date. No extensions, no excuses, and I expected resistance, but nothing prepared me for the tidal weight of guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation that he unleashed. He accused me of turning my back on my family, of kicking him when he was down. He talked about how hard it was for him, how the world was against him, and how he thought that I'd be the one person who'd understand. And look, I get it, life is tough, but it's one thing to struggle. It's another to take advantage of someone's kindness repeatedly. I tried to stay calm, laying out the reason for my decision and the broken promises, the lack of effort to find work, the betrayal of using my card without permission. He seemed to take it all in. But then he countered with a counter, accusing me of not doing enough to help him, and he argued that I did not know what it felt like to be in his position, to be constantly rejected and feel worthless. The guilt was heavy. I started questioning myself. Was I really doing the right thing? Was I being too harsh? But then it dawned upon me, the same patterns, the same manipulative tactics. It was not about genuine need. It was about Brock not wanting to face responsibility. He had become so adept at playing the victim that it had become his primary way of operating. The confrontation did not end well. Voices were raised and old memories, both good and bad, were thrown into the mix. Brock refused to acknowledge the move-out date, so he had nowhere to go. I felt cornered, trapped in my own home. My emotions running rapidly from anger to feeling sheer exhaustion to guilt. Every time I came home, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, anticipating the next confrontation, but Brock has not moved out, and I'm starting to fear that he never will. Now I'm at a loss. How did it come to this? How do I handle a family member who's clearly taking advantage of me, but is also in a vulnerable position, no doubt? I can't help but feel like I'm in a no-win situation. Things are escalating, and I have a feeling it's all going to come to a head soon. I need to figure out my next steps before it's too late, but more on that later. The Brock saga continues. Update number 3. Yeah, guys, I know it's been a month, and let me tell you, the Brock situation reached a boiling point. I was over the guilt, over the worry about what others would think, but frankly, I was just done. Every day was like an endless cycle of tension. Passive-aggressive remarks from Brock, and something had to give. It was going to be me doing the thing that I tried the rational route, the understanding route, even the desperate pleading route, but nothing seemed to work, and with each passing day, Brock settled more and more into the apartment like it was his own personal sanctuary. The idea of getting law enforcement involved did cross my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. Brock already had the run-in with the law. He didn't need another black mark against his name. Plus, despite everything, he's still family. I did not want to ruin his life, but I did want my space back. That's when an idea began to form in my mind. I remembered this one time during our childhood when we went camping, and Brock nearly jumped out of his skin when he thought he saw a cockroach in his sleeping bag. The guy has a serious cockroach phobia, no joke. A light bulb went off in my head. A quick online search and I found these ultra-realistic looking fake cockroaches, identical. Perfect. I ordered a bunch and eagerly awaited their arrival. It felt almost devious, plotting this out, but after everything, a little prank seemed harmless enough. The day the fake roaches arrived, I went to town. I placed them strategically around the apartment, and in the kitchen, under the pillows in the bathroom, even in the couch's cushions where Brock slept. I took a step back, surveying my work, and felt a mixture of giddy, excitement, and sheer terror. It looked amazing. Then I went off to work, and my phone glued to my side, awaiting the inevitable freak-out from Brock, and then, around mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed, and it was Brock. "Dude, oh my gosh, your place is infested with cockroaches. You need to fix this." I replied, "Oh, yeah, they've been there for a bit. They don't really bother me. It's just something that happens in older buildings, man." The message that followed were a string of capital text message with explicits and panicking rants. Brock went on about how he couldn't live in a place with cockroaches and how I needed to hire an exterminator now. The satisfaction I felt reading his text was something I had not felt in a long while, but I decided to push the envelope a bit further. "Hey man, I'm tight on cash right now. If they bother you that much, maybe you could hire someone." I can't even set foot in there until they're gone. I can't deal with roaches, man. This is crazy. This was working better than I imagined. The day drew on, and by evening I had a series of missed calls from Brock's and a barrage of texts. The final one simply read, "I'm staying at a friend's tonight. I can't deal with the cockroaches. Fix it, please." When I got home, I discovered the aftermath of Brock's panic. Overturned furniture, discarded items everywhere. It was a mess. But the grin on my face could not have been bigger. The funniest thing I saw was his takeout food. Flipped over on the floor. It looked like he just got it. He must have sat down to eat it when he saw the cockroaches and panicked, ruining his meal. I spent the evening cleaning up, occasionally chuckling as I picked up another fake cockroach. It felt like I'd regained some, control in a situation that had long spiraled out of my grasp. The next day, I returned home to find Brock's stuff gone. No note, no message, nothing. Just an empty space where his things once were. It was finally over. The roach revenge had done its job, and I could not help but feel a little bit of sadness mixed with relief. How have things reached this boiling point? But one thing was clear. My home was mine again. I'm happy I was able to get Brock out, but I also knew this wasn't the end. The next chapter was still left to unfold, and I'll keep you all updated. Final update. Hey everybody, so it's been a week since the Roach Revenge, and let me tell you, things have not exactly settled down. You would think Brock might have learned a lesson from the cockroach fiasco, that maybe he'd take a step back and reevaluate his life choices. No, instead he just kept hitting me up for money and whining about when I'd get the roach situation sorted so he could come back. One evening, after a long day at work, I get a call from Brock. I could already guess what he wanted.
Oh, hey man, I'm short on rent again, and the job search, it's not going well. Think you can lend me some cash?
Brock, I said. Remember what I told you last time? I can't keep bailing you out.
Oh man, but we're family.
And there it was. The guilt-tripping card he always played, the one that had worked on me so many times, but this time it was different. Brock, I've been there for you every time you needed me, right?
Oh, yeah, man.
But I can't do it anymore. It's not just about the money, it's about you needing to take responsibility for your own life.
So that's it? You're just cutting me off, man?
Not completely. If you need somebody to talk to, or you're in an emotional crisis, I'll be there for you. But financially, that ship has sailed, Brock.
Fine.
A few days later, I heard through the grapevine that the friend Brock was staying with has also gotten tired of his antics. And Brock has been badgering him about when he'd move back into my place. With a hint of satisfaction, I realized that his friend was also done with Brock's games. Over the next few days, I received a barrage of messages from Brock, each message desperate more than the last, and sometimes he'd apologize, other times he would just demand that I help him out. It became clear that he was bouncing from one crisis to another, never taking a moment to address the root cause of his problems. I'll be honest, it was tough. Ignoring his pleas, knowing he was struggling, it went against every instinct I had. The guilt of the familial obligation was weighing heavy, and it all tugged on my heartstrings. But I knew deep down I could not continue to be his crutch, enabling him. As the days turned to weeks, the messages slowly began to decrease in frequency, and while I hoped Brock might find his way, I also realized that I could not shoulder his burden any longer. I started to rebuild my life, finally free from the cloud of Brock's issues, and I began to rediscover the joys of living my own life, in my terms, without the constant pressure of his demands. Still, I come to you guys with the final question of my story. Am I the a-hole for taking advantage of Brock's fear of cockroaches? Let me know. Top comments from the original post. Comment number 1 specifically states, not the a-hole. Dude, not the a-hole. You're just trying to live your life and not get dragged down by someone else's mess. Honestly, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably have cracked way earlier. He's an adult and needs to learn responsibility. You've done more than enough for him, and sometimes tough love is the best love. People like Brock will always take you if you keep giving. Comment number 2. Absolutely not the a-hole. Your cousin's behavior sounds super toxic, and you were just setting boundaries, which is crucial for self-care. Life's challenging, and while it's great to help family, it should not be at the expense of your own sanity. Hope you find peace in your decision and move forward without guilt. Comment number 3. Everybody sucks here. Brock's behavior is undeniably unacceptable and manipulative. We agree. However, you've enabled this behavior for oh so long that he probably thinks it's okay. By continuously providing for him, you unintentionally told him that his behavior was acceptable. Though your recent actions are not justified, the past cannot be ignored. Well, it's a tough situation, but both sides share a bit of blame. Everybody sucks here. Final comment. I might be going against the grain here, but hear me out. You are the a-hole. Family should always be there for each other. Yes, Brock messed up, but cutting ties completely seems harsh. Maybe there were better ways to handle this, like involving other family members or seeking counseling for him. Everyone goes through tough times, and I feel you might regret pushing him away. Alright guys, so I want to know your thoughts on this story, and my opinion, I believe that OP is not the a-hole, but I can see how some people could consider saying everyone sucks here, simply because, well, OP was somebody that was enabling Brock. I want to know your thoughts about that specifically, guys, so drop your opinions down below if you've ever had somebody in your life like Brock, who you like, part of your family, maybe one of your friends, but you just can't get them to stop being such a mooch. Let me know your story down below in the comment section, and if you want daily revenge stories, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for joining me today, and once again, my name's Mr. Reddito. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.